Hi, welcome back. Now, in this session, we'll discuss three things. First, we'll discuss the different types of errors. Following this, we'll then discuss the different error handling techniques. And lastly, we'll then discuss how to debug a program for identifying errors. So, let's get started with the first topic, which is different types of errors. Now, in VBA, errors can mainly be classified into three different categories. So, the first one is called the runtime error. The second one is compile error, and the third one is logical error. Now, a runtime error occurs when the code is executed and there's a type mismatch. As such, there is no issue or no problem with the syntax. The syntax is all fine. So, if you look at in the example below, this particular program was done on an Excel sheet which just had two sheets, sheet 1 and sheet 2. But over here, we are referring to sheet 5. So, that is why we get a runtime error. Let's move on to the second type of error, which is compile error. Now, compile error occurs when one of the statements has not been typed correctly. So if you look in this particular example, we've got worksheet. So we are missing a T and a S basically to complete worksheets. So that's why Excel gives a compile error. And you know when Excel is giving a compile error or a runtime error. So for a compile error, it will have the message compile error, whereas for a runtime error, it will show the message runtime error. So let's run these programs in a VBA editor and then we'll see what sort of error we get. So I'll go back to my Visual Basic editor. I've already written these codes. So right now this particular Excel file just has one sheet, sheet 1. And over here I'm referring sheet 5 in here. I'll select this entire code and I'll go over here and just click on run. It gives me a runtime error. If I click on debug, it points me to the line which has error in it. So now I can just reset this code. Similarly, for my compile error, I've got this particular example where I'm missing T and S from worksheets. So VBA gives me a compile error and it highlights the keyword which it thinks has error in it and it says sub or function not defined. I'll again reset it. Now let me go back to the deck. Now the third kind of error is called a logical error. So basically this is nothing to do with missing a T or S or referencing to a particular sheet which is not there in an Excel file. It is all to do with the logic of your VBA program. So for example, if you want to create a VBA code for summing two numbers and instead of summing you are using a minus operator, then this is called a logical error in layman terms. So this may result in the code giving unexpected outputs. So in VBA, all the errors are classified into these three categories. Now let's move on to error handling techniques. Now the obvious question which you may be asking is what is error handling or why is it important? Now in layman terms, error handling is handling of a VBA error. That is when you have executed a VBA program and if a error is encountered by VBA, so how do you handle that situation? Using error handling, you can either suppress that error so that the code runs or executes normally after the line where the code had error in it, or using error handling, you can also have functionalities built in which will skip the rest of the code and come to a set of predefined lines and execute those lines. So now we look at a couple of ways by which error handling can be done. So let's go back to the VB editor. Now over here I've written this program. If you ignore this particular line, let's just comment it out for now. All this program is doing is we've got a macro named T2. It has a variable y which has a value of 2. Then we have a variable x which is y divided by 0. And then we have a variable z which is y divided by 1. And then we are just ending this program. Now if I just run this program, Excel will give me an error that division by 0 is there. So now as you can see there is no error in the syntax. If I debug it, it will take me to the line where this error is. Let me just reset it. Now, if I uncomment this particular statement, so what this tells me is that if there is an error, resume the next statement. So right now I know that this particular statement will have an error or will give me an error. Using this particular statement on error resume next, the error will be suppressed and I will not get any error. Let's see how this works. So now I executed this particular code and I did not get any error. Now let's see if I place this statement after the line which had error in it. So now till here I don't have any error suppression going on. My error suppression will happen from this line onwards because my statement on error resume next has started from here. So let me just run this. So now you can see, because there was no error handling or error suppressing technique before this erroneous statement, now I'm getting an error. Now let me write another program. So now let's see if I run this program, will I get any error? Yes. Now the error which I will get over here in this program will be on the basis of this particular line, not this particular statement, because for this particular statement I had a error handling statement which was suppressing the error. But whereas over here using on error go to 0, it removes the suppression of errors. So now I'm getting an error. If I click on debug, it will highlight the second line. Now using resume next or go to 0, this is still fine. So one suppresses the error and other removes any suppression of error if there was done in the program. But the most efficient way of handling an error is using go to label. So I've got this program over here. Now if you just concentrate on the program first, it has if worksheets sheet 5 again. It's the same program which I had over here. Sheet 5 is equal to UK. Then worksheets sheet 1 cells 2 comma 2 dot value is equal to London. So if cell A2 in sheet 5 is UK, then cell B2 in sheet 1 will be London. Let me just comment this part out. So if I run this, I'm getting a subscript out of range error, which I know, which is because I don't have any sheet 5. Now if I uncomment this, I'm getting a prompt now that error has occurred. So what is happening is, let's just look at this code. So we have declared over here that whenever an error occurs, go to error jump. And I've got my error jump code over here, which is, it will give me a message box which has error has occurred written on it. So once the execution starts and we come to this particular line over here, VBA realizes that there is no sheet 5, so it immediately gives an error. And because we had said that on error go to error jump, so it skips this particular line, this particular line, this particular line, and immediately goes to this line, and then it displays this particular statement, which gives me a message box. Now, if you look at a normal VBA program, it starts with sub and it ends with end sub. And VBA will run any statements which are between sub and end sub. But when we use this sort of error handling technique, the code is executed till exit sub. And if an error occurs, then only Excel will jump all the statements and go straight to our error handler, which is declared after exit sub. So these are a couple of ways by which you can handle errors. Now let's look at how to debug an error or how to identify which line is giving me an error. So let's get back to the deck. Now debugging an error, there are different ways by which you can identify the errors in the code and resolve it. So with breakpoint, what happens is, suppose we've got this code over here. If we've selected this particular line, so when I start running my program, this line will get executed, this line will get executed, and my execution will then stop at this line. Now, if these first two lines, or say 3 lines or 4 lines for other programs, they run error free, then I know that the error will be from this line onwards to the end of the program. So let's look at an example. I'll just put some value in A3. So let me just put a random string. So let me just walk you through this program first. So the name of the macro is debug1. I am declaring two variables, d1 as date and d2 as string, that is it can consist of text. Now for d2, I'm giving the value in A3, which is www, and in d1 also I'm giving the value of A3 only. Now d1 over here I've put in as date, but the value of A3 is www, which is a string. So technically this program should give me an error. So let's see, when I run it, I'm getting a type mismatch error. So now if I click on debug, it will automatically take me to the line which has error in it. But let's use first breakpoint. So let's say I put a breakpoint over here in front of D1. So what I'll do now, I'll run the program and the program will get executed. If my error does not come over here, then I know that my error will be in the lines after this particular block of statements. So let's run the program. So now my code has come back over here, and now I know that so far for these 3 lines I did not have any error. So my error would be in this line. So this is how, using breakpoint, you can break your code into different parts and then run each of those blocks and see where or which line the error is. Now let's just reset it. Now stepping in technique is the second method which is used for debugging an error, and this is one of the most easiest way, and I really find it useful also. So let's go back to the Excel file and then I'll explain how this works. So again we've got this same program over here. Now for using step in, we just click on this program, and to step in you go to debug and you can click on step into, or you can also use the shortcut key which is F8. So when I do it the first time, it will take me to the first statement of the program. Then when I do it again, because dim d1 and dim d2, we are just declaring the variables as such. There is no particular operation we are doing over here. So the control shifts to d2. Right now the value of d2 is null. Now the control shifts to D1, but as you can see, the value of D2 is now www, which was the value in cell A3. Now if I do a step into again, I get an error. And this is because D1 was declared as a date, whereas cell A3 consists of a string. So using step into, you can go to each and every statement and see how the values are being passed throughout the entire program, whether the values are being passed correctly or not. And then as you keep on going through the statements, you'll come across the statement which had error in it, or because of which you got the error prompt, and then you can fix that statement. So this is all what we have for this particular session. If you've got any queries or any questions, please drop me a note. Thank you.